The dying star burned red against the endless black of space. It was old, older than most civilizations in the galaxy. And now, it was fading. The Valari had watched it for thousands of years. It was their sun, the source of all life on their homeworld. And it was dying. High Scientist Zorvan stood at the center of the research station, his thin fingers moving across the control panel. His large eyes reflected the holographic displays that floated around him. Numbers and symbols danced in the air, showing the progress of their greatest experiment. "The energy collectors are at full capacity," said one of his assistants, a young Valari named Torvun. "We are ready to begin the extraction." Zorvan nodded slowly. The Valari were not a hasty species. They had spent 200 years planning this moment. Their sun was dying, but they believed they could save it. They would pull energy from subspace itself and feed it back into the star. It was dangerous. It was untested. But it was their only hope. Counselor Dreth watched from the observation deck above. He was old, even by Valari standards. His pale skin marked with the spots of age. He had argued against this experiment in the council chambers. The risks were too great, he had said. But the council had voted, and now they were here. "Begin the sequence," Zorvan commanded. The station hummed with power. Deep within its core, machines that had taken decades to build came to life. They reached out into the fabric of space itself, tearing a small hole into subspace. For a moment, everything was perfect. Energy flowed from the tear, bright and pure. Zorvan felt hope rise in his chest. They were going to save their star. They were going to save their world. Then something went wrong. The tear in subspace expanded. It was only for a second, but in that second, a pulse of energy burst outward. It traveled faster than light, faster than thought, spreading across the galaxy in an invisible wave. Zorvan shut down the experiment immediately. The tear closed. The station fell silent. "What happened?" Counselor Dreth demanded, his voice sharp with fear. "A minor fluctuation," Zorvan said, though his hands were shaking. "The experiment is stable now. We can continue." But across the galaxy, something had heard them. The pulse traveled through the stars. It passed dead worlds and living ones. It passed through nebulas and asteroid fields. And then, after traveling for many light years, it reached a small blue planet called Earth. Admiral Jack Morrison was sleeping when the alarm woke him. He had been dreaming of his daughter's wedding, a happy memory from years ago. The alarm cut through the dream like a knife. He was on his feet in seconds. 52 years old, and he could still move like a soldier. His gray hair was cut short, and his face was lined with scars from battles he rarely talked about. He grabbed his uniform and dressed while walking to the command center. "Report," he said as he entered the room. Commander Kate Sullivan turned to face him. She was younger than him, in her early 40s, with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. She had served under Morrison for 15 years, and he trusted her completely. "We received a signal, Admiral," she said. "Origin point is in the Outer Rim, Sector 773. Unexplored space." "What kind of signal?" Kate's face was pale. "Emergency beacon, sir. Colony distress pattern Alpha 7. Morrison felt his blood run cold. Alpha 7 was the worst code in the Terran military. It meant a colony was under attack. It meant extinction-level threat. It meant everyone was dying. "Which colony?" he asked. "That is the problem, sir. There is no colony in that sector. We have never sent anyone there." Morrison stared at the map on the main screen. The signal pulsed red, again and again, coming from a region of space that humanity had never explored. "Could it be a ship?" he asked. "A lost expedition?" "No record of any vessel in that area," Kate replied. "But the signal is real. It matches our emergency codes exactly. Someone out there is using human communication patterns." Morrison's jaw tightened. There were only two possibilities. Either a human ship had somehow ended up in unknown space and was now dying, or something else had learned their codes. Neither option was good. "Wake the fleet," he ordered. Kate hesitated. "Sir, we do not know what is out there. It could be a trap. It could be, Morrison agreed. But if there are humans dying out there, I will not sit here and do nothing. Wake the fleet. All ships within range. Full combat readiness. The order went out across Earth and its colonies. On ships and stations throughout human space, soldiers and sailors woke from their sleep. They read the message and felt the same cold fear that Morrison had felt. Something was happening in the outer rim, something bad. Within hours, ships began to move. Cruisers and destroyers, carriers and battleships. They came from every corner of human territory, all heading toward the same point in space. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship, the USS Defiance. It was the largest warship humanity had ever built, armed with weapons that could crack a planet in half. He watched the fleet gather on his tactical display. 100 ships. 200. 300, sir, Kate said quietly. This is the largest fleet action in human history. Kate, I know, Morrison replied. And if someone is killing our people, they will see exactly what humanity is capable of. He did not know that there was no attack. He did not know that the signal was an accident. He did not know that the Valari existed, or that they were peaceful scientists who had never fought a war. All he knew was that the signal sounded like death, and Jack Morrison had sworn an oath to protect human life. No matter the cost. Set course for the signal origin, he commanded. Maximum speed. We leave in 6 hours. The fleet prepared for war. And far across the galaxy, the Valari continued their experiments, completely unaware of the storm that was coming. Zorvan looked at the data from their test. The pulse had been unexpected, but it seemed harmless. Just a burst of energy into empty space. Should we report this to the council? Torvan asked. There is nothing to report, Zorvan replied. It was a minor error. We will correct it in the next test. He turned back to his work, already thinking about improvements to the machine. He did not notice the faint readings on his scanner, the ones that showed strange signatures moving in distant space. The Deathworlders were coming. And they were coming with fire in their hearts. The USS Defiance cut through space like a blade. It was not a beautiful ship. Human warships were never beautiful. They were built for one purpose only, and that purpose was war. Admiral Jack Morrison stood at the center of the bridge, watching the tactical display. 312 ships followed his flagship through hyperspace. It was more firepower than humanity had ever gathered in one place. Time to arrival? He asked. 6 days, 14 hours, Commander Kate Sullivan replied. She stood beside him, her eyes fixed on the same display. All ships report ready for combat. Morrison nodded. 6 days was a long time to prepare for battle. It was also a long time to think about what might be waiting for them. He remembered the first war he had fought, 30 years ago. A small conflict on a colony world, barely a footnote in human history. But he remembered the bodies. He remembered the smell of burning buildings and the sound of children crying. He had sworn after that war to never let such things happen again. Now he was leading the largest fleet in human history toward an unknown threat, and he still did not know what was out there. "Get me Dr. Marsh," he ordered. A few minutes later, Dr. Linda Marsh entered the bridge. She was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes. She had spent her life studying alien languages and cultures, though she had never actually met an alien. No human had. Humanity had found ruins and artifacts from dead civilizations, but never a living species. "Admiral," she said, "you wanted to see me?" "I want your opinion," Morrison replied. "The signal we received uses human emergency codes. How is that possible?" Linda thought for a moment. "There are a few possibilities. First, someone captured a human ship and learned our codes. Second, someone intercepted our communications and copied them. Third, and this is unlikely, the signal is a coincidence, an alien transmission that happens to match our patterns. Which do you think is most likely?" "I cannot say without more data," Linda admitted. "But I will tell you this. Whoever sent that signal, they do not understand what it means. The pattern is perfect, but there is no message, no words, no coordinates, no request for specific help. Just the alarm, repeated over and over. Morrison frowned. You think it was an accident? They're fighting Dilbid. I think it is possible, but I also think we cannot take that chance. She was right. Morrison knew she was right. If there was even a small chance that humans were dying out there, he had to respond. He dismissed her and returned to his thoughts. Around him, the crew of the Defiance worked in silence. They were professionals, trained for moments like this, but he could see the tension in their shoulders, the worry in their eyes. In the fighter bay below the bridge, Lieutenant Ben Carter was checking his ship for the 100th time. He was young, only 26 years old, with brown hair and an easy smile. He had joined the fleet to see the stars, not to fight wars, but now war had found him. You going to sleep tonight? Asked his wingman, a woman named Lisa Torres. Ben shook his head. Cannot sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I imagine what we might find out there. Could be nothing, Lisa said. Could be a false alarm. Could be, Ben agreed. But 300 ships for a false alarm? The Admiral does not think so. Lisa was quiet for a moment. Then she put her hand on his shoulder. Whatever happens, we face it together. That is what we do. Ben nodded. He appreciated her words, but they did not stop the fear. He had never been in real combat before. He had trained for it, simulated it, studied it, but training was not the same as reality. He sat down at his small desk and pulled out a piece of paper. Old-fashioned, he knew. But his mother had always liked handwritten letters. Dear Mom, he wrote. I do not know when you will receive this. We are heading into unknown space, responding to a distress signal. The Admiral says it might be serious. I want you to know that I am not afraid. Well, maybe a little afraid. But I remember what Dad used to say. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is doing what must be done despite the fear. I will do my duty. I will make you proud. I love you, Ben. He folded the letter and placed it in an envelope. If he did not return, someone would send it to her. Deep in the engineering section, Chief Engineer Sam Reyes was running diagnostics on the ship's reactor. He was an older man, in his late 50s, with thick arms and grease-stained hands. He had served on 12 different ships during his career, and the Defiance was his favorite. How is she looking? Asked one of his technicians. Perfect, Sam replied. This old girl will not let us down. He patted the reactor housing like it was a living thing. In a way, he supposed it was. The ship had a soul, he believed. Every ship did. And the Defiance's soul was strong. Sir, the technician said. Do you think we are going to war? Sam was quiet for a long moment. I think we are going to do what humans have always done. We are going to face the unknown and make it wish it had left us alone. The days passed slowly. The fleet moved through hyperspace, a tunnel of light and energy that bent the rules of physics. Inside that tunnel, time felt strange. Minutes stretched into hours, and hours compressed into seconds. Admiral Morrison held a briefing for his senior officers on the third day. He stood before a holographic map of the target sector. This is what we know, he said. The signal originated from this point. Our long-range scans show a structure of some kind. Possibly a station or a large ship. We have detected energy readings consistent with advanced technology. Alien? Kate asked. Almost certainly. The energy signatures do not match any human design. The officers exchanged looks. First contact with an alien species, and they were going in with guns ready. Our mission is simple, Morrison continued. Investigate the signal. Locate any human survivors. Neutralize any threats. If this is a trap, we will spring it and destroy whoever set it. If this is an attack on human lives, we will respond with everything we have. He looked at each of his officers in turn. I do not know what we will find. But I know this. Humanity has survived everything the universe has thrown at us. We crawled out of the mud of a world that tried to kill us every day. We survived ice ages and plagues and wars. We are Deathworlders. And whoever is out there, they have no idea what they have summoned. The officers nodded. They understood. The fleet flew on through the stars, carrying the fury of a species that had learned to fear nothing. And at its head, Admiral Jack Morrison counted the hours until battle. He did not know that there would be no enemy waiting for them. He did not know that the beings he was about to meet had never hurt anyone in their long history. All he knew was his duty: protect human life, destroy human enemies. The storm was gathering, and soon it would break. High Scientist Zorvan was studying the results of their latest test when the alarm started screaming. He had never heard that sound before. In 200 years of working on the station, he had never needed to. "What is happening?" he demanded, his thin fingers flying across the console. Torvund's face had gone pale, his large eyes wide with terror. Hyperspace signatures. High Scientist. Many of them. Coming directly toward us. How many? Torvund's voice shook when he answered. Over 300. Zorvan felt his heart stop. The Valari had 2 hearts, and both of them seemed to freeze in his chest. 300 ships. The entire Valari fleet, if they had one, would number perhaps a dozen vessels. And those were science ships, exploration craft, transports. They had no weapons. They had never needed weapons. Counselor Dreth came running into the control room, his old legs struggling to carry him. "What is this? What have you done?" "I do not know," Zorvan admitted. "The signatures are not Valari. They are not any species we know." The Council had records of dozens of alien civilizations, all of them peaceful, all of them traders and scientists like the Valari. None of them operated fleets of this size. None of them moved with this kind of speed and purpose. "Can we run?" Dreth asked. "There is nowhere to run. Our ships are too slow. They would catch us within hours." The 2 Valari stared at the display, watching the signatures grow closer. They were trapped. Whatever was coming, they would have to face it. The first ship dropped out of hyperspace, and Zorvan felt his soul try to leave his body. It was massive, larger than the entire research station. Its hull was dark gray, covered in angular plates of armor. Weapon ports lined its sides like teeth in a predator's mouth. It was the most terrifying thing Zorvan had ever seen. Then more ships appeared. Dozens of them. Hundreds of them. They emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, spreading out around the station like a net closing around prey. "By the old gods," Dreth whispered. "What are they?" Zorvan checked his scanners, searching for any information about these vessels. The database had nothing. No records, no matches, no hints. These ships were completely unknown. Then the message came. It blasted across all frequencies, overwhelming the station's communication systems. The voice was harsh and alien, speaking in a language that sounded like growling and barking. Zorvan could not understand a single word, but he understood the tone: anger, fury, wrath. "They are demanding something," Torvund said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I cannot translate." Quote, "Try," Zorvan ordered. "Use every database we have. Find something." On the USS Defiance, Admiral Morrison watched the alien station through the main view screen. It was a delicate structure, all curves and flowing lines. Beautiful, he admitted to himself. But beauty meant nothing if these creatures had killed humans. "Status report," he commanded. 312 ships in formation, Kate Sullivan reported. "All weapons charged. All shields at maximum. No response to our hail." "They heard us?" "Yes, sir. They definitely heard us. But they have not replied." Morrison frowned. Either they were buying time, or they could not understand him. Either possibility was dangerous. "Scan for human life signs," he ordered. The scan took only seconds. Kate's face showed confusion when she read the results. "Sir, There are no human life signs on that station. None at all. What about the surrounding space? Debris? Escape pods? Nothing, sir. No evidence of any human presence. Past or present. Morrison's frown deepened. The distress signal had come from this exact location. But there were no humans here. No colony. No ship. Just an alien station and a lot of questions. Dr. Marsh, he said. What do you make of this? Linda had been working at a side console, trying to analyze the alien structure. Admiral, I do not think these aliens sent the signal intentionally. Look at their station. It is a research facility, not a military base. They have no weapons that I can detect, and their ships, the few that are docked, are tiny, transport vessels. Nothing more. Then how do you explain the distress signal? I cannot explain it yet. But I do not believe these creatures are hostile. They are afraid. Their communication attempts are scattered and desperate. They are trying to talk to us, but they do not know how. Morrison considered her words. He had trusted Linda's judgment for years. She was rarely wrong about alien artifacts and ruins. But this was different. This was a living civilization. And lives were at stake. Keep trying to communicate, he ordered. But we maintain combat readiness. I will not risk this fleet on assumptions. On the station, Zorvan had finally made progress. The alien language was unlike anything in the Valari databases, but mathematical patterns were universal. He sent a simple message, a sequence of prime numbers, a universal greeting used by scientists across the galaxy. The response came immediately. More strange words, but this time with a mathematical structure underneath. The aliens were trying to translate. They are intelligent, Zorvan said, hope flickering in his chest. They want to communicate. They want to kill us. Dreth replied bitterly. Look at those ships. Look at those weapons. No peaceful species builds machines like that. Maybe they had to, Zorvan said quietly. Maybe their world was not as kind as ours. The translation progressed slowly. Dr. Marsh worked on one side, Zorvan on the other. Word by word, concept by concept, they built a bridge between two completely different species. After 3 hours, Linda finally understood enough to deliver a simple message. She looked at Admiral Morrison, her face pale. Sir, they are called the Valari. They say they do not know anything about an attack. They say the signal was an accident, a side effect of an experiment. They are begging us not to destroy them. Morrison stared at her. An accident? Yes, sir. They claim they have never seen humans before. They did not know we existed. The signal matched our emergency codes by pure chance. Kate stepped forward. Sir, if that is true, then we mobilized the largest fleet in human history for nothing. Maybe, Morrison said. Or maybe they are lying. Maybe they are buying time for reinforcements. He turned back to the view screen, studying the alien station. The Valari had made no hostile moves. They had no weapons. They were clearly terrified, but Jack Morrison had seen too many traps to trust appearances. He had watched friends die because they believed an enemy's lies. He would not make that mistake again. Prepare a boarding party, he ordered. We will see for ourselves what is on that station. Kate nodded and began issuing orders. Lieutenant Ben Carter was called to the briefing room. He was going to lead the team. As he walked to the shuttle bay, Ben thought about the letter he had written to his mother. He might need to write another one soon. The first contact between humans and Valari was about to begin, and no one knew if it would end in peace or in fire. The shuttle crossed the empty space between the Defiance and the Valari station. Inside, Lieutenant Ben Carter checked his weapon for the 10th time. His hands were steady, but his heart was racing. 12 Marines sat behind him. The best soldiers on the ship. They wore heavy combat armor and carried rifles that could punch through steel. If the aliens tried anything, they were ready. Docking in 30 seconds, the pilot announced. Ben took a deep breath. This was it. First contact. Whatever happened in the next hour would change history. The shuttle attached to the station's airlock with a soft thump. Ben waited as the pressure equalized, then opened the door. The corridor beyond was empty. It was also beautiful. The walls curved gently, covered in patterns that seemed to glow with soft light. The air smelled strange but not unpleasant, like flowers from an alien garden. "Move out," Ben ordered. "Standard formation. Watch your corners." The Marines advanced slowly, their weapons ready. They passed through several corridors without seeing anyone. The station seemed deserted. Then they turned a corner and found them. The Valari were waiting in a large chamber, perhaps 50 of them. They stood in a group, their thin bodies pressed close together. When they saw the humans, they made a sound that Ben could only describe as a whimper. Ben stopped. He had expected many things. He had expected soldiers, weapons, traps. He had not expected this. The Valari were small, barely reaching his chest. Their skin was pale, almost translucent, and their large eyes reflected the light like mirrors. Their limbs were thin and delicate, built for a world with much less gravity than Earth. They were terrified. One of the Valari stepped forward. It was older than the others, its skin marked with spots of age. It raised its hands, showing that they were empty. "Counselor Dreth," said a voice in Ben's earpiece. It was Dr. Marsh, watching through his helmet camera. "He is their leader. He wants to show you that they mean no harm." Ben lowered his weapon slightly. "Tell him, we are not here to hurt them. We just want answers," Dr. Marsh translated. The old Valari, Dreth, seemed to sag with relief. He spoke rapidly, gesturing toward a doorway on the far side of the room. "He wants to show you something," Dr. Marsh said. "The machine that caused the signal. He says it was an accident. He says they did not mean to call you." Ben hesitated. This could still be a trap. But something in the old alien's eyes made him believe. This was not the face of a liar. This was the face of someone who was genuinely afraid and genuinely sorry. "2 Marines with me," Ben ordered. "The rest stay here. Watch them, but do not fire unless fired upon." He followed Dreth through the doorway and down another corridor. They came to a large room filled with machines. At the center was a device unlike anything Ben had ever seen. It was shaped like a sphere, covered in crystals that pulsed with dim light. Another Valari was there, younger than Dreth. He introduced himself through gestures and broken translation as Zorvan, the scientist who had built the machine. "This is the energy extractor, Doctor," Marsh, translated as Zorvan, explained. "They were trying to save their star. It is dying. Without it, their planet will freeze. This machine was supposed to draw energy from subspace and feed it to the star." Ben looked at the machine, then at Zorvan. "And it sent out a signal instead?" "Not intentionally. When they activated it, there was a fluctuation. A burst of energy that traveled through subspace. It was not a message. It was just noise. But somehow, it matched the frequency of your emergency codes." Ben felt the tension drain from his shoulders. An accident. A terrible, impossible coincidence. 300 warships had crossed the galaxy because of a fluctuation in a science experiment. He almost laughed. "Almost. Admiral," he said into his communicator. "I believe them. There is no threat here. These are scientists, not soldiers. They have never even seen a weapon before today." There was a long pause before Morrison replied, "Are you certain, Lieutenant?" Ben looked at Zorvan, who was watching him with those big, fearful eyes. He looked at Dreth, who seemed ready to collapse from stress. He looked at the machine, clearly built for power generation, not warfare. "I am certain, sir. There is no enemy here." On the Defiance, Admiral Morrison absorbed the report. 300 ships, 6 days of travel. The largest fleet action in human history. All for nothing. No, he corrected himself. Not for nothing. They had discovered an alien civilization. A peaceful one, apparently. A civilization that was trying to save their dying son. That was not nothing. "Kate," he said, "stand down from combat readiness. Maintain defensive posture, but pull back the assault teams." Kate looked relieved. "Yes, sir." Morrison turned to Dr. Marsh. "Can you ask them about their star? How bad is the situation? Linda relayed the question. When the answer came back, her face was grim. Their sun will fail completely within 50 years. When it does, their homeworld will become uninhabitable. They have been working on this project for 2 centuries. It is their only hope. Morrison was quiet for a moment. He thought about Earth, about the sun that had warmed human faces for millions of years. He tried to imagine what it would feel like to watch that sun die. Tell them, he said slowly, that we may be able to help. On the station, Zorvan heard the translation and did not understand. Help? These terrifying creatures, with their massive ships and deadly weapons, wanted to help? Why? He asked through the translator. We called you by accident. We have nothing to offer you. Why would you help us? Ben Carter smiled, a strange expression on his alien face. Because that is what humans do. When people are in trouble, we help. Even if they are strangers. Even if they are different from us. Zorvan did not know how to respond. In all the Valari's history, they had never encountered a species like this. Creatures from a death world, evolved for violence, armed with weapons of unimaginable power. And they wanted to help. Perhaps the universe was stranger than he had ever imagined. Dreth stepped forward, his old body trembling. If you truly wish to help, he said, we would be grateful. But we ask for nothing. We have caused you enough trouble already. Ben shook his head. You did not cause trouble. You caused first contact. And I think, maybe, you caused something else too. What is that? Ben looked around the room at the gathered Valari, at their fear slowly turning to wonder. He thought about the fleet outside. All those weapons that would not be fired today. I think you caused the beginning of something new. Something better than either of us could build alone. He held out his hand, a human gesture of friendship. Dreth looked at it. Confused at first, then understanding. He reached out with his own thin hand and touched Ben's fingers. First contact. Not with weapons and anger, but with curiosity and hope. Admiral Morrison watched the scene through Ben's camera. He felt something loosen in his chest, a tension he had been carrying for days. Well, he said quietly, I suppose the universe still has some surprises left. Kate Sullivan smiled beside him. What do we do now, sir? Morrison considered the question. Then he straightened his uniform and made a decision. Now we figure out how to save a star. Admiral Jack Morrison had led fleets into battle. He had faced enemies that wanted to destroy everything he loved. He had made decisions that cost lives and saved worlds, but he had never walked into an alien space station before. The shuttle docked smoothly, and Morrison stepped through the airlock. Lieutenant Ben Carter was waiting for him, along with a group of Valari who watched the Admiral with wide, nervous eyes. Sir, Ben said, saluting. Welcome to the research station. Morrison returned the salute, then looked around. The station was nothing like human construction. It was organic, flowing, built by minds that thought in curves instead of angles. It was beautiful in a way that human ships could never be. Counselor Dreth approached, his thin hands clasped together in what Morrison now understood was a Valari gesture of respect. Through Dr. Marsh's translation, he spoke, Admiral Morrison. On behalf of the Valari people, I welcome you to our station. We are honored by your presence and grateful for your mercy. Morrison shook his head. There is no need for gratitude. We came expecting a fight. We found something better. Dreth led him through the corridors to the main laboratory, where Zorvan was waiting with the energy extraction machine. The scientist looked exhausted, his large eyes shadowed with worry. Hi, scientist, Morrison said. I understand you have been working on this project for 200 years. Zorvan nodded. Yes, it is our life's work, the work of many generations. But we have failed. Every test brings us closer, but we cannot stabilize the energy flow. The fluctuations are too unpredictable. Show me, Morrison said. Zorvan looked surprised, but he began explaining the technical details. Morrison listened carefully, asking questions, studying the diagrams that floated in the air around them. After an hour, he called Chief Engineer Sam Reyes to the station. Sam arrived with a team of human engineers, their tool bags hanging heavy from their shoulders. They spread out through the laboratory, examining the Volari machines with professional interest. "This is remarkable work," Sam said, running his hands over the energy collector. "The principles are sound. The design is elegant. But you have a resonance problem in your containment field." Zorvan blinked. "You can see that?" "I can see it because I have made the same mistake before. 20 years ago, we were building a new type of reactor for deep space exploration. We had the same problem. The energy wanted to escape in bursts instead of flowing smoothly. How did you solve it?" Sam smiled. "We cheated. Instead of fighting the bursts, we redirected them. Created a feedback loop that turned the instability into a feature instead of a bug." He pulled out a small device and began sketching modifications in the air, using human holographic technology. Zorvan watched with growing excitement as the solution took shape. "This could work," he said. "This could actually work." Over the following days, human and Volari worked side by side. They communicated through translators at first, but soon began developing a shared technical language, a mix of mathematics and gesture that crossed the boundaries between species. Lieutenant Ben Carter found himself spending more time on the station, helping where he could. He was not an engineer, but he had other skills. He taught the Volari about human culture, about Earth and its history. In return, they taught him about their world, about the gentle civilization that had grown under a dying sun. One evening, Ben sat with a young Volari named Torvun, looking out a window at the red star that hung in the darkness. "It is strange," Torvun said. "I have feared that star my whole life, feared its death. But now, looking at it, I feel something else." "Hope?" Ben suggested. "Yes, hope. I had forgotten what that felt like." Ben nodded. He understood. For so long, the Volari had been fighting alone against an impossible problem. Now they had allies. Now they had friends. The test came on the 7th day. Zorvan stood at the controls, his thin fingers trembling slightly. Sam Reyes stood beside him, ready to make adjustments if needed. The entire station held its breath. "Beginning sequence," Zorvan announced. The machine hummed to life. Energy flowed from subspace, bright and pure and steady. The feedback loop caught the fluctuations and redirected them, turning chaos into order. The readings on every screen showed perfect stability. "It is working," Zorvan whispered. "By the old gods, it is working." The energy flowed toward the star, invisible beams of power that would take months to have an effect. But the first step had been taken. The star would be fed. The Volari homeworld would survive. Cheers erupted throughout the station. Volari and humans embraced, an awkward tangle of thin limbs and thick arms. Even Admiral Morrison allowed himself a small smile. Later, Councillor Dreth called a formal meeting in the station's central chamber. The room was filled with Volari leaders and human officers, all gathered to witness history. "Admiral Morrison," Dreth said, his voice thick with emotion, "the Volari people owe you a debt that can never be repaid. You came to us with weapons of war, but you leave as our friends. We wish to offer you something in return." He gestured, and several Volari brought forward a crystal tablet, covered in flowing script. "This is a treaty of alliance," Dreth continued. "The first between our peoples. If you accept, the Volari Collective and the Terran Union will be bound together in friendship for all time." Morrison took the tablet carefully. He read the words, translated into English by Dr. Marsh. It was a simple document, promising cooperation, mutual defense, and eternal friendship. "I cannot speak for all of humanity," Morrison said slowly, "but I can speak for myself, and I accept." He pressed his thumb to the tablet, leaving a human print beside the Volari signatures. The room erupted in cheers again. As the celebration continued, Morrison stepped outside, standing on an observation deck that looked out at the stars. Kate Sullivan found him there. Watching the fleet that hung in the darkness. Thinking about the report you will have to write? She asked. Morrison chuckled. I am thinking about what we almost did. We almost destroyed them, Kate. We came here ready to burn that station to ashes. If they had not been so afraid, if they had tried to fight back, we would have killed every one of them. But we did not. No. We did not. Because one young lieutenant decided to look before shooting. Because one scientist was brave enough to keep talking. Because sometimes, the universe gives us a second chance. Kate nodded. What happens now? Now we go home. We tell our story. And we hope that this is only the beginning. The fleet departed the next day. 300 ships, weapons cold, heading back to human space. They left behind a small team of engineers who would continue helping the Volari. Ben Carter was among them. He had volunteered to stay, to be the first human ambassador to an alien world. As he watched the fleet vanish into hyperspace, he felt no regret. On the station, Zorvan was recording a message for the Volari archives. His voice was calm now, his fear replaced by wonder. They came in wrath, he said. The Deathworlders. The humans. They came with fire in their hearts and weapons in their hands. They could have destroyed us. They had every reason to destroy us. But they did not. They chose to help. They chose to build instead of burn. This is the lesson we must remember. The strongest beings in the galaxy are not strong because of their weapons. They are strong because they know when not to use them. The humans came as enemies. They left as friends. And the universe is better for it. He ended the recording and looked out the window at the star that would now live. Somewhere beyond it, the human fleet was racing home, carrying the story of first contact. It was a good story, Zorvan thought. A story of fear and hope, of misunderstanding and reconciliation. A story that proved even the darkest moments could lead to light. The Deathworlders had come, and against all odds, they had brought life.